does the United States have a dominant two-party system, whereas Germany, Italy, Spain, Sweden, Japan, Australia, Israel, South Korea, and most of the rest of the world's democracies have competitive multi-party systems? A number of theories have been developed to explain the dominance of two political parties in the American system. Let's examine several of the more prominent explanations that have been offered. One explanation for the dominance of two political parties in the American system is history and tradition. This explanation essentially says that the reason the United States has a dominant two-party system is because the United States has historically had a dominant two-party system. Indeed, this is a factually accurate assertion. If we examine the history of American party politics, we find that almost from the very beginning, American politics has been dominated by two political parties. The first party system developed shortly after the ratification of the Constitution in the late 18th century and featured competition between the Federalist Party, led by Alexander Hamilton, and the Republican Party, led by Thomas Jefferson. This Republican Party was not the same political party as the modern Republican Party, so to distinguish it, we will refer to it as the Jeffersonian Republican Party. In fact, the Jeffersonian Republican Party is arguably the precursor of the modern Democratic Party. The Jeffersonian Republicans were derisively referred to as Democratic Republicans by their Federalist opponents. But apparently the Jeffersonian Republicans must have decided that they liked the term, as they began referring to themselves as Democratic Republicans in the early 19th century. The Federalist Party died out in the early 19th century, and for a brief period of time in the second decade of the 19th century, the period that historians call the era of good feelings, the Democratic Republicans had no real opposition. But a split soon developed among the Democratic Republicans, and the National Republicans emerged as organized opposition. The National Republicans quickly disintegrated, but re-emerged as the Whig Party. By this time, the Democratic Republicans had dropped the Republican part from their name and become the Democratic Party. So we see a period of two-party competition between the Democratic Party and the Whig Party. By the 1850s, the Whig Party had ceased to exist as organized opposition to the Democrats, but a coalition of former Whigs, Free Soilers, and anti-slavery Democrats formed the modern Republican Party in the run-up to the Civil War. Since that time, American politics has seen two-party competition between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. It is worth noting here that the Democratic Party is the oldest political party in continuous existence anywhere in the world. Democrats have a proud history. Their party is not just the party of Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. It is also the party of Lyndon Johnson in the 1960s, Franklin Roosevelt in the 1930s, Woodrow Wilson in the 19-teens, Andrew Jackson in the 1820s and 1830s, and arguably Thomas Jefferson in the 1780s and 1790s. The Republican Party is the second oldest political party anywhere in existence in the world. Republicans likewise have a long and proud history. Their party is the party of George W. Bush in the early 2000s, Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, Dwight Eisenhower in the 1950s, Teddy Roosevelt in the early 20th century, and Abraham Lincoln in the 1850s and 1860s. Note, however, that over the entire course of this history of two-party politics, minor parties, or third parties as we sometimes call them, have existed. The parties shown here certainly do not constitute an exhaustive listing of all the parties that have existed in American history. It is only a small fraction. Most have been fairly short-lived, disappearing from the political scene almost as quickly as they popped onto it. This raises an interesting question. If throughout our history we have had other political parties, why do we say that the American system is a two-party system? Why do we refer to these other political parties as minor parties? Is it because they are unimportant? No, not really. In fact, some minor parties have played a crucial role in American political history, focusing attention on specific issues such as the Prohibition Party, or embodying political movements such as the Populist Party and the various incarnations of the Progressive Party. Some have provided an organizational basis for ideological principles, such as the Libertarian Party. Still others have formed around a particular personality, perhaps to promote a candidacy that operated outside of the fold of the two major parties, such as the Reform Party of the 1990s, which formed to promote the presidential candidacy of H. Ross Perot. We call them minor parties because they generally are not successful in winning elections. Remember, one of the basic purposes of political parties is to take over and control government. This is accomplished by winning elections. While their presence in a campaign may, at times, force the nominees of the two major parties to address issues they might not have otherwise addressed, few minor party candidates have been successful in winning elections. Indeed, minor party candidates rarely receive more than 2% or 3% of the vote. Overwhelmingly, most seats in the United States Congress and in state legislatures have been held by Democrats and Republicans. This is the indisputable fact that defines the American system as a dominant two-party system. So this first explanation for American two-partyism accurately describes the reality of the system, but description is not explanation. In fact, as explanation, history is particularly weak. History doesn't really explain anything. I'm certainly not suggesting that we shouldn't study history or that we cannot be informed by history. Only that history, or to be more precise, historical patterns, does not explain anything. Saying that the United States has a dominant two-party system because it has historically had a two-party system is no more of an explanation than saying that Israel has a multi-party system because it has had a multi-party system since the modern state of Israel was founded in 1948. Why has the United States historically had a dominant two-party system? Why has Israel had a multi-party system?